It's very difficult to interrupt such beautiful kingdom of God conversations happening over these tables, but I have to do it. Welcome one and all to this presentation about my recent journey to Chile. When I say recent, I mean February. It feels like a little bit distant now, but I went to Chile from February 1st to February 10th, and then I came back and Lent began. Lent started, and then we were on a full sprint until Easter, and now we are beyond Easter and able to share back about the experience. So I hope that you are enjoying your salads and your soups and your bread, a most important condiment to life in Chile. I read somewhere this week that Chileans eat more bread per capita than any country in the world. So just know that while I was in Chile, I ate a lot of bread and enjoyed every last bit of it. Hope that you are enjoying your meals. So I think if we move to the first slide, James, that will be great when we have a moment. Our time today will be mostly me sharing about what I did while I was in Chile, also a little bit of a history of the Chilean partnership that the Southern New England Conference of the United Church of Christ has had for quite a while. I will also talk a little bit about Centro Shalom, or the Shalom Center, which is where I spent half of my time while I was there, and also a few words about the future of the partnership and how others might be involved with it. You'll notice, if you can read it, for those in the back of the room, you are not expected to read anything. I'm the one who's expected to be able to read these small prints just so that I can do the presentation. But you'll notice here it says IPECHI, which stands for the Iglesia Pentecostal de Chile, the Pentecostal Church in Chile, or IPECHI. Just so I may use those, the Pentecostal Church, IPECHI, the Iglesia Pentecostal, those are all used interchangeably. So let's see, great, yes. So this picture was taken of me in the airport on the day of our annual meeting, when I had to mad dash out of here, only to have my flight be delayed by 2 hours. So this is my raised eyebrow. Are we going to make our connection in Florida when we get there? And I would like to say, whatever prayers you were saying for me, we walked off of our plane in Miami as fast as we could to the next gate and onto our plane to Santiago, Chile. So while we were delayed, we did make it to the flight that we were supposed to take. Thanks, if you'll change it. Thank you. So this was the global partnership between the Southern New England Conference, United Church of Christ, and IPECHI began quite some time ago. We've had a partnership with the Pentecostal Church in Chile since 1987, and some of you may be wondering, how is it that a New England congregationally UCC-based organization would find themselves in a partnership with a Pentecostal church in Chile? Well, come to find out, IPECHI was was the very first Pentecostal church to join the World Council of Churches, right? So the World Council of Churches, I believe, is based out of New York and Geneva. There are connections there. And so when IPECHI joined the World Council of Churches, the United Church of Christ is also a part of that organization. And so we met some people from there, some specific people, and I'm sorry, my history of that is not strong because I'm new to the partnership, but those people forged a way for us to be prayerful together and to be in communion between our cultures and our churches. So since that official partnering through Common Global Ministries, which is the international global mission organization that our church and the Disciples of Christ are a part of, since that beginning, that prayerful beginning, There have been many delegations to and from Chile, including youth, chorus, and theater groups, exchanges to the Shalom Center, and opportunities to pray for one another. So I went to a conference gathering in the spring of 2025, and somebody came along and put a piece of paper in front of me that said, "We are planning a delegation to Chile in 2026. Would you like to be a part of it?" And I saw that piece of paper and I thought, I would like to be a part of that. I would very much like to be a part of that. And so I reached out to the Reverend Dr. Christopher Nye, who is the coordinator of our partnership, and said, I think maybe I'm supposed to go to Chile with you. And he responded, well, more to come, more to come. And so later in the year, I made an application to be a part of the delegation, and I turned it in and I reached out very excitedly, at which point Chris said, "So you are the only person who has reached out to express interest in being a part of this delegation." And I think a lot of that has to do with the timing of February 1st to 10th, not a vacation week, not a time that a lot of people are necessarily available. However, it is the time of year when Ipechi has their annual gathering of pastors and gathering of churches. So it was a very important time. And maybe the next slide will say a little bit more. So here we are, the delegation from the United Church of Christ, the Southern New England Conference, the Reverend Dr. Chris Nye, who has such a deep passion for the Chilean people and for this partnership. He was a gift to me as the head of the delegation who has been to Chile maybe more than 15 times over the course of his life, and his doctoral dissertation is about this partnership. So he was a great guide and a wonderful person to travel with. So we first were going there because of that annual pastoral gathering, and also because this is the year that is the 25th anniversary of the Shalom Center. The Shalom Center, or Centro Shalom, is an environmental education church camp in the foothills of the Andes. So as I was hiking in the Andes, I was thinking, I'm going to look back on this and go, remember that time when I went hiking in the Andes? It was beautiful. The trees were stunning. The mountains are majestic and beautiful. And Centro Shalom is an incredibly special place. The land itself was a gift from another global partner in Ohio, a Disciples of Christ, I believe, region. And the place has been tended to with such loving intention, including a global ministries worker, Elena Hagel, who was there for nearly 20 of these 25 years that they are celebrating this year. So we also were there to attend the installation of the new bishop of Ipechi and to discuss the future of the partnership in this post-COVID time. As you might imagine, global partnerships are hard to maintain when you cannot be physically present with each other. So this is maybe the second time that there has been exchange happening since COVID, and it was a joy. So we'll go to the next slide. So our first, we got off the plane in Santiago, got into a truck, and drove for another 3 hours to a place called Curacao, which is where the main headquarters of Ipechi are. And then we rested and showered. It was wonderful. And then we got back into that truck and went another hour or so to Centro Shalom. Those who have been to Horton Center, one of the UCC summer camps in New Hampshire, it felt very similar going in that you did not feel like you should be driving on this road. But when you got there, there was the welcome and the peace, and it was nighttime again. So would you go to the next slide for me? Thank you. So when you get to the Shalom Center, there is a main house where most people have their sleeping, and in that house there is a kitchen and there are supplies. When we got to the Shalom Center, I'm going to tell you the story of arriving first. When we got there, we were welcomed by some of the volunteers, and they started pulling tables out of this main house. It was dusky and dark, and the tables went out, and the tablecloths went out under the trees, and then there was food that was magically appearing on those tables, and we were invited to sit around them. It was a long table with an orange tablecloth, my favorite color. And there were solar lights that kind of were gently giving us a little bit of light, but not enough to really see by. The bread came out, and the palta, and ham and cheese, and tea and coffee. And I looked around the table, and there were 13 of us sitting around this common table at dusk. And there was laughter and joy, and it was as if I had been there for much more than half an hour. I felt so at home and so grateful for the laughter and the camaraderie and the welcome that was extended to, especially to me and Chris, but also to all of the volunteers who were convening there for the next week. That week included a 1 day or maybe overnight for new pastors of the Pentecostal Church, of which there were about 23 or so that were there with us. And then there was a 3-day retreat with pastors' kids, mostly between the ages of 13 and 18. It was wonderful to just be enveloped into a leadership role, because here we were as guests, but also it was a gift to just observe how they do this environmental camp. Later on, I will say a little something about what you need to do in order to go on a delegation like this. One thing you have to be comfortable with is that life in Chile is not the same as life in the United States. Life at an environmental camp is not going to be as, let's say, cushy as someone might expect. So the water comes from a spring and gets put into clear recycled bottles and put into the sun. And if you don't have sun, which we did not have sun, the water is cold. And that is what you get to use when you bathe, right? So boy, that was a quick one. One time over the course of the days we were there to bathe. Other than that, there were lots of ways to clean up. And there was a sink, and I felt like I did great. But it was very dusty and warm because it's summer there. But not always warm because we didn't have the sunshine that week. So let's see. I also wanted to note that we had the chance while we were there to connect with David Giron, who is the area executive for Global Ministries for Latin America and the Caribbean. So a chance to engage in conversations about the future of the partnership, and also to get his kind of wisdom and insight shared with us about global ministries. So one of the special things that happens at the Shalom Center with each group that goes there is that you go on a pilgrimage walk or a caminata to the Sentinel, which is the high mountain area. So because we were there with 2 different groups, I got to make this hike in the Andes twice and get to see the trees and the flowers, and also the way that they program around that pilgrimage. You walk up to where you will walk from, and then there's a time of prayer around a peace pole, and then you continue on your walk to the lookout. And the lookout looks across a beautiful valley and down on at least 100-foot waterfall, and the trees. It was just beautiful and stunning, and usually there's a group picture that gets taken there. So here we are gathering around the peace pole. This is Rodrigo, who was leading our prayers before we left and our singing, here's the group of pastors making their way on their caminata, and this is the lookout point where you look across at more mountains. I found this to be one of the most moving parts of the time there, because before you go, you are prayed for, particularly in relation to the trees, right? So there's a tree that was a point of gathering, and Rodrigo spoke with me about, this tree, I'll get emotional talking about it, but this tree has been here for hundreds of years, and it's seen many storms, and it's seen many beautiful sunny days. So it is with you. You are on a journey. You may be experiencing challenges or storms, or you may be experiencing peace. No matter what you are experiencing, you are meant to continue your journey and your walk with God. And then you get sent off to walk alone for the last quarter mile of the hike. So, James, if you'll turn the next. This is where we gathered, and this is Patricia, who is the executive director of the Shalom Center, her husband, Rodrigo, who does a lot of the programming and curriculum development, and Milka, who is one of the very devoted volunteers and was kind of raised in this church camp experience and is now a profound leader. And then there's me. This is up on the Ipechi Facebook page, and this picture was not taken by me, clearly, but I just love the joy that is radiated in the picture as we gather around the peace bowl. So the next slide this is the Sentinel, and this is a 4-minute video of the 25th anniversary of the Shalom Center. There are English subtitles that I might read to you because I think the people who are in the back will probably not be able to read those subtitles. So my apologies that I'll be talking over the various speakers, but it's just to bring that simultaneous translation for you all. Thank you, James.
A veces nos preguntamos qué es la paz.
Sometimes we ask ourselves, what is peace?
Y yo quiero invitarlo a reflexionar sobre
And I want to invite you to reflect
esa paz que
on
nosotros
what
tenemos
is this
constantemente.
peace that we
O la que
constantly
buscamos
have
constantemente.
or we constantly seek.
Y quiero
And I would
invitarlo a
like
pensar sobre
to ask
shalom.
you to think about
¿Qué es
shalom. What is shalom?
Si vemos nuestra
If we look
línea
at our
del tiempo, corría el
timeline,
año
it was in the year
2000 cuando se
2000
comenzó a
when this
gestar
initiative
este
began to
proyecto
take shape,
primero en el
first in the
corazón del
Lord's
Señor,
heart,
y luego fue
and then it was
traspasado al
passed on to
corazón
the
de
hearts
nuestro
of our
obispo
Bishop Ulysses Munoz
y a nuestra hermana
and our
Elena
sister
Gil,
Elena Hegel.
quienes
They were able
pudieron
to submit this
presentar este
project to
proyecto a
Global
ministerios
Ministries,
globales y fue aceptado
and it was
por el
accepted by the
campamento
Ohio camp.
de Ohio, quienes fueron
They were
los
the ones who
gestores
made it
de que
possible
hoy
for us as members
nosotros
of the
como miembros
Pentecostal
de la
Church
Iglesia
of
Pentecostal de
Chile
Chile pudiésemos
to
tener
have this
este bello
wonderful
lugar
place
y pudiésemos realizar
and to be
las
able to hold different
diferentes
activities
actividades
here.
aquí.
See you at Shalom.
El Centro Shalom,
Shalom
es un
Center
lugar donde
is a
también
place
nosotros
where we
tenemos
also
el
engage in
aprendizaje
experiential
experiencial.
learning.
¿Qué quiere decir esto? Que
What does this mean?
aprendemos a través de la
It means that we
experiencia,
learn by
y lo más
doing,
importante
and
de
most
todo, a
importantly,
través
by
de
being a
hacer
part of a
comunidad. En el
community.
Centro Shalom,
At the
hacemos
Shalom Center,
comunidad.
we build
Siempre
community.
buscamos que las
We always
personas
strive
puedan
to ensure that
sentir,
people can
experimentar
feel and
esa
enjoy
comunidad
that sense
y
of
vivirla
community
en un espacio
and
seguro.
experience it in a safe place.
¿Qué es shalom?
So what is
La palabra
shalom? The word
tiene que ver que
shalom
no
refers not
solamente
only
tenemos
to peace
paz
within
con
ourselves,
nosotros mismos, sino que esa
but
paz
also
que
to the
también
peace we
tenemos con
have with
aquellos
those
que nos
around
rodean,
us.
con nuestros amigos,
Our friends,
nuestros
our
vecinos,
neighbors,
nuestra
our
familia,
family,
nuestros
our
hijos.
children.
¿Cómo tenemos o cómo está
How
nuestra
we have
paz
peace with
también
nature.
con la naturaleza? ¿Cómo está nuestra paz con Dios?
How our peace with God
El
is.
Señor aquí me enseñó
The Lord
a ser
taught me here to
resiliente.
be resilient.
Aquí el Señor me demostró
Here the Lord truly showed me
realmente
what
lo que
shalom
es
is.
el shalom. Ese shalom que es
This shalom
integral
that
y que
is integral
sobrepasa
and surpasses
todo
all our
nuestro
understanding
entendimiento y que va mucho
and
más
goes
allá de
far
lo que
beyond
nosotros a
what we
veces leemos en la
sometimes read in
escritura
the
o escuchamos
scriptures
en una
or hear in a
predicación.
sermon.
Es realmente
It's
sentir
truly feeling
el
the
amor
Lord's
del
love
Señor
upon and within our lives.
sobre y en nuestra vida.
El Centro Shalom,
Shalom
para mí
Center is a
es
refuge
un
for me.
refugio,
It's my
es mi
safe
lugar
place.
seguro. Allí he crecido,
I've grown up here, I've
he
learned here,
aprendido, Dios me ha
God has taught me
enseñado
in
a
different
través
ways.
de diferentes formas, de diferentes maneras.
Centro Shalom
Central
ha sido
Shalom Center
un
has been
lugar
a
de
place where I have
redescubrirme,
rediscovered
de
myself,
ver que soy
where I've
útil
seen that I am useful
más
beyond what
allá
I
de lo
have
que yo
built for
misma
myself,
me he construido, de ver que
where I've seen that I can
puedo
give more
dar
than I
más
ever
de lo que yo me
imagined.
imaginaba.
El Centro Shalom significa
The
para
Shalom
mí un
Center
lugar de
means a
libertad,
place of
donde
freedom to
incluso
me, where I
puedo
can
decir
even say that I
que he
have
visto
seen
cómo el
how
amor de
God's
Dios se
love
expresa
is
de
expressed
maneras que
in
ni
ways
siquiera
we could never
podríamos
even
imaginar.
imagine.
El Centro Shalom,
For me, the
para
Shalom
mí,
Center, apart
además de
from
ser
being a
un
gathering
lugar de
place with
reencuentro
God
con
and
Dios,
nature,
con la naturaleza, ha sido ese
has
espacio
been
seguro
that
en
safe
donde
place where
he
I have been
podido
able
conocer otras
to
áreas de mi
discover
persona.
other areas of myself.
El ser shalom,
Being
el tener,
shalom,
el buscar esa
having or
palabra que haga
seeking that
sentido a
word that
cada
makes
uno de
sense to each
nosotros,
of us
es lo que buscamos en cada
is
uno
what
de
we
los
aim for in
programas que
each
nosotros
of the
hacemos con
programs we
ustedes.
do at the Shalom
Y
Center.
cada uno de
And we
nuestros
hope that each of our
participantes
participants will
esperamos
have
que
that
esa vivencia,
experience,
ese shalom
that
de Dios,
shalom from
que no
God,
solamente tiene que ver con
which
una
is not
área en
only
su vida,
related to
sino que
one
tiene que ver
area,
con
but to
todo,
everything,
con una amplitud
to
mucho
a
más
much
grande
greater
de lo que
scope
creemos,
than we
de
believe
lo que
or think.
pensamos. Porque Dios es grande y es
Because God is
grandioso.
great and He is great in
El
all
Centro
His
Shalom
magnitude.
lo
Shalom
hacemos
Center is made
todas
up
las
of all
personas
the people who
que
have worked
hemos
or
trabajado
participated in this
o
place.
participado en este lugar.
Shalom Center is made of, boy, I didn't catch that, sorry. Here we are after 25 years. The Shalom Center continues to be a re-encountering place or a place of reunion. There you go. So while we were there, they were also filming this. So for posterity's sake, I will be in the 25th anniversary along with the Reverend Dr. Christopher Nye. For their posterity's sake, we are there. So I hope that gave you a little bit of a sense of what a stunning place, and not just the place, but the community that is created in that place that sustains so many people in faith in the Pentecostal church in Chile. So at the end of our 5 days there, we came back down the mountain, back to where we had started, and there was another shower, and that was glorious. And a little bit of a rest, because 5 days in the mountains and hiking and all of this, to have that rest time, to get refreshed and ready for worship. This is the celebration, the 25th anniversary celebration of the Shalom Center was done in very grand fashion, and it was my first experience of the Pentecostal, typical Pentecostal worship in Chile. There were also a goodly number of presentations made to Chris for his support, and to certainly for Patty and Rodrigo for their tireless work. So it was a beautiful celebration. One of the things that surprised me about it was how I just want to say comparatively, compared to our worship, their worship is very exuberant and loud. So everything, all of the music is amplified, and I think there were probably 8 to 10 mandolin players. There was also a band somewhere behind us that I never saw, with trumpets and trombones and electric bass and drums. Yeah, it was really beautiful and very moving. So we can go to the next slide. These were pictures from that evening of some of the kids who were in my group that I spent the 3 days with. So Angie and Maria Jose were incredibly special and kind to me. One of the things with the kids was they would say okay, because I would go, okay. And somehow this was hilarious. And that it was kind of, they were learning some English. I was trying desperately to use my limited Spanish skills, and we were having the best time together. And also really meaningful times of exploring faith. So thank you for the next slide. The next day, we received word while we were at the Shalom Center that Ipechi had elected that day, during the week, a new bishop. So we were given the opportunity to also be present for the installation of the new bishop, the Reverend Israel Aravena Reyes. And the process for the installation of the bishop was stunning. It was in their cathedral, which holds about 2,000 people, and then there was seating outside for another 500. So this was a big celebration. And from outside the church, part of the process, outside the church, they brought in a torch. You can see the torch right here. It's like an Olympic torch. And each of the areas of ministry within Ipechi was given a time with a torch. This was right around, you all remember, we had the Winter Olympics this year. I felt like I was at the Winter Olympics. Here comes the torch being handed off from one ministry to the next ministry to the next ministry to the Bishop Emeritus, who is on the right, to the current bishop, and then to the new bishop. And he held it up. And there was just so much joy in that moment. They also, of course, prayed and blessed him into his new role. It was stunning to be there and to be a part of it, and humbling to be acknowledged as international visitors for this opportunity. You can go to the next slide, thank you. So here, Chris and I are waiting for the worship to start, and you get a sense of how large the cathedral sanctuary is. Where he was being prayed for is just up to the right there. Thank you. All right, so the next day was the final worship of the pastoral gathering, which was not just a pastoral gathering, it became a gathering of the churches. So we were embedded in with Rodrigo and Patty's church, and so we marched in I think it had to be at least 10 miles, no, maybe 3 miles through Curacao from the kind of the main street down the way. There were, as best I could tell, there were about 200 churches represented in this parade. So when you gathered, one of the ways that people know where their people are is that they have matching clothes for their church. So we knew who we were supposed to be with because Patty had this very same dress and jacket on. And each of the churches had a slightly different, beautiful dress and ties. The men had ties to match. We can work on this, can't we? So there we are gathering in the main part of the town, and here we are marching on our way. Each church brings with them, another way they know how to find each other, a banner that has their church name on it, and they also bring their own band with them. So if you can imagine the kind of Pentecostal joy of all of these different songs and bands making their way together. If you'll go to the next slide, James, thank you. So, and here are some of the people bringing their amplification with them down the street. And this is our group. This is actually a little video clip, so hopefully we'll play that and you'll get a sense of it. And then behind us, and the next song is "Here Come the Saints." You know, the same when the saints go marching in. So "Alabare" is actually a song that I knew. I will always praise God. I knew from times visiting friends in Mexico. So I was like, wait, I know that one! Yay! And so I'll sing it out. So when we arrived to the cathedral, it really was a couple of hours of the parade going. And when we arrived, once again, we had that feeling of joy and welcome. When each group came in, they would file by the altar in the front of the church, and there were announcers who were announcing, and now we're welcoming this church, and now we're welcoming that church, and we're praying for this church, and we're praying for that church. Again, it felt like the Winter Olympics, right? It felt like the parade of nations, but it was the parade of churches, and it was so lively and wonderful to see, children, adults, each group that would come in with their leaders and their singers and their musicians, and then everybody else who had made the journey to be there. So we'll go to the next slide. Here's a little video of a group coming through the church on their way. So just before we play it, you would come through the church and then go out again, because if you have 200 churches gathering, you can't just all come in and then conglomerate. So you would come in, go out, sing a little bit more in the streets, and then make your way back into where you would sit for the worship service. Okay, go ahead, James. Isn't that great? It's just so just exuberant, and I love that one young man who's like, "Yep, I'm here I am." And maybe part of that is because at that point, as you were going across, you could see yourself on the screen. It's kind of like being at the baseball game, and you're like, "Oh, there I am," But really, with glory to God and for that moment. So thank you. So this is the Sunday worship, which started with Patty handing me a bottle of water and a candy bar. I knew it would be long. And this was the opportunity for the new bishop to preach and to share a good word with us all. And in this picture, you can see all of the musicians are here, the drum set, and then the choir to the right. So there were probably at least 100 people, it felt like, maybe less than that, but it was a really significant portion of people participating in the music ministries, and it's very, very critical to their church's life and ministry. So thank you. So after we had the 2-hour parade and the 2 hours of worship and maybe an hour of lunch together, which was kind of the capstone, if you will, of the time there, we made our way back to Santiago, and we went to a place called Via Grimaldi, and Via Grimaldi was, this is kind of a separate part of the journey, where we were not with our church people, but we were with them for some of it, but we had a couple of days in Santiago that were much more cultural immersion and history learning. So Via Grimaldi is a peace park now. It was during the dictatorship, Pinochet's dictatorship in the early 70s. It was a clandestine jail and torture center. So we've come off of all of this, beautiful community, and then into some learning that was very, very difficult. Human rights are deeply important in Chile because of that dictatorship between 1973 and 1991. Some of us remember that. Some of us have heard those names or that time. But this place was very, very special to go and experience and to learn much more about the history. There were a good number of people in the hundreds that were killed and disappeared from this place. So the Peace Park has been made as a place where families who have never had the resolution of knowing what happened to their loved ones can come and find peace. I think I included a few more pictures of this place. So it looks very peaceful and beautiful. And then if you go to the next slide, it's also a place of really painful remembrance. So there's a small area where some families have left things for this Peace Park and Museum, really, of their loved ones, so that they will always be remembered. So, thank you. That evening, we went to visit Franco here, who is a student in Santiago and has a connection to the Reverend Dr. Chris Nye from an academic standpoint. And so we were gifted with the opportunity to visit the home of Father Mariano Puga, who was a worker activist priest during that time. We found out as we were talking with them that he had been taken to Via Grimaldi on numerous occasions and had been tortured in those times, and he spoke of those times as some of the hardest of his life. Mariano Puga died in 2020 of cancer, but his home is maintained as a gathering place and a place of prayer and learning, and the church that I believe he started the church in the neighborhood. We also had a chance to go there. This woman whose name, I'm so sorry, has gone from my mind, and perhaps Chris will know this, was invited to be a part of his community and spoke so fondly of him. As we were sitting and talking, all of a sudden, here comes the palta and the bread and the cookies, and we weren't planning on having dinner together, but it just happened that way. And then there were the eggs that came out, and we made sandwiches and talked and then walked together down to the church. If you go to the next slide, in his home and at the church, the artwork was very stunning to me. Of course, in the Protestant and Pentecostal churches, there's maybe not quite the same level of art in churches. It's a little more plain. But here is on the outside of the church a mural that says, no more torture, and where are these members of our community that went missing and have not come home? And in this one, it's a material like a banner that says, another world is possible. That was in his home. So it was delightful to visit and to talk with them, and then to kind of make the connection between this time and the lived experience of people in Santiago. So the next slide, this is a mural of Father Puga outside of his home with the symbols of being a worker priest. There's the paintbrush and the trowel along with the cross. Now, you probably can't tell in this picture how absolutely giddy the Reverend Dr. Christopher Nye and I were to go into the library at the Comunidad Cristiana Cristo Liberator, so that they have a liberation theology library at their church that Chris and I just wanted to stay there and read all of the books. It's, from my perspective, I know that there were a number of books in this library that have not been translated into English, like many of the liberation theology books have been. So it was just a treat to see this kind of, for people who, theologians, pastors, people who have a love and appreciation for liberation theology. This was a very special place to have the opportunity to visit. So we'll go to the next. So the next day, Chris took me on about an 11-mile tour, walking tour of Santiago that was just the perfect way to end our time there. This is it would be the Capitol building, thank you so much, which is undergoing repairs, you can see. And this picture on the left, so the things that I never knew, when the Allende government in Chile was overthrown by Pinochet, this building was bombed with him in it. So he, it would be as if our military bombed the White House or the Capitol building. The people who were still in that building, Allende wound up giving an address to the nation before he killed himself or was shot. There's still maybe some questions about that. And then all of the people who were still in the building with him, when they went out the side door, were killed. So this place where I'm sitting and the flowers were already left there has the names of all of the people that came out the building. It's so where I'm sitting with the flowers, I was looking right at that door that the people had come out. So it's a tender place of remembrance, and there are signposts everywhere of that time and that history and the desire for human rights to be honored and people's families that have been touched by that time. So thank you. Here we are outside of the cathedral in Santiago. And I love this picture because of the juxtaposition of the very ancient, not ancient, but the old with the very contemporary. And then this is the inside of the cathedral where we had a chance to pray and to walk around and look at some incredible art that if I put all the pictures of the art in the cathedral into this slideshow, we would be here for another hour. It was stunning to visit there. So then we also climbed up this hill, which I believe was called Lucia, like Santa Lucia. And from the top, you could look out on Santiago, and what you can see there are the height of the Andes, and can you see that from where you're sitting? It was just the kind of looking out like, wait, the mountains shouldn't go that far into the sky. It was very beautiful to see. I'm so grateful that every time Chris said, "Would you like to go climb that hill?" And I said, "What? Of course I want to go climb that hill because I like to climb hills." So to be able to see out in that way was a beautiful kind of end to our day. And let's see what's next. Oh yes, we also in that walk had the chance to go to one of the houses of Pablo Neruda, who is a laureate author, poet laureate, yeah. And also the next time I go to Chile is I would love to actually go into these places. There's a cultural center that is dedicated to Gabriela Mistral, who is also a poet laureate from Chile. So, okay. So what do you need to be a partner or a pilgrim in faith for such a journey as this? You absolutely have to have an open mind and heart, patience and a fair amount of humility, and understanding that you may learn and forget more than most people ever get to learn. A willingness to share faith and hope and to receive it from others, a readiness to listen, courage to try even when you, I said may get it wrong, even when you will get it wrong, the courage to try, a trust in God and in our partners, a willingness to be welcomed, and occasionally a willingness to be uncomfortable. I left space on this slide because I'm sure there are other things that are required that I have either forgotten or just hadn't thought of yet, and hope that there are opportunities in the future to add to that list, I guess. And then lastly, there's just a few things. The future of the partnership, ways that we can be involved as a congregation would to be praying for the Pentecostal church in Chile. That I would guess that most of you did not know that we had this partnership, right, as a conference. And so kind of spreading the word that we can be praying for people's that we may get to meet or that we may not get to meet, and for their church as it endeavors to do good in their communities. One of the things that was a part of our worship together, maybe some of you were paying attention to Chile a little bit more than you normally do while I was there. There were wildfires that were happening south of where we were. And so there were churches and homes of church members that were damaged. So that piece of praying for one another and hearing their stories and contributing like the church does in times of challenge and trouble, that was felt very much by me, and I think it's something that we can do as a conference and as local churches, just be praying for them. To consider being a part of future delegations to and from Chile. When people come from someplace and are hosted, that takes probably as much work as it does for people to go and to be hosted by others. So maybe paying attention for when it is that we might be good hosts for delegations from Chile and participating when these opportunities emerge, if we're able to. We're also looking in the future of the partnership, and have been talking about this, maybe working on utilizing technology in ways so that we can feel more connected even when we're apart. Delegations do an awful lot for partnerships because it's face-to-face time. Zoom can be a similar gift in that regard, and so we're trying, the working group that works with the Chile partnership is looking at doing more regular quarterly meetings with our partners in Chile that anyone in the conference could participate in and be a part of. So thank you. Lastly, I just want to say thank you for coming, for staying, for eating salads, and maybe trying merquén, the spicy chilies, if anyone was so bold. Oh, that's just for me later. Okay. Thank you also especially to George for making the delicious soup that many of you enjoyed, to Sue and Catherine and Mary Ann and James, and Libby, thank you, for a team that helped bring this to you all. I wonder if you have any questions for me. Thank you. Yeah, George. Some of them traveled quite a ways. There were like tour buses that were hired. Yeah, so somebody is going to Google this while we are here, I hope, to look at the length of Chile. It's very, it's long. Oh, here I am on the screen. It's very long, and I think some would travel like 6 hours by bus. Where we were was fairly centrally located, south of Santiago, but every person that I spoke to there said, "Oh, are you going to go to the south? Because it's very beautiful there." No, we're not going to the south, but I hear it's really beautiful there, because there's such joy and pride in the diversity of the land and of the communities. Yes, Phyllis. I don't know. Yeah, my feet tell me that I might have walked over the course of 10 days, maybe 50 miles. Maybe 50 miles over 10 days. It didn't feel like a walking tour so much. That last day, my feet were telling me, I think we've walked more than 10 miles, and we had. Yeah, and some up and down. Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you. I wasn't tracking my miles, but it was a good, I think it does require some stamina to do this kind of a trip where we were very much on every day for a significant amount of time, and connecting with partners. Other questions? It's so weird to be on the screen while you're right next to it. It's like, are you looking at me or are you looking at the screen? Other thoughts, questions? Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. So, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the similarities are that the local churches are deeply, my impression anyway, is that they are deeply caring for their communities and for their pastors. That piece of kind of joy and community, and when things are challenging, having the support systems and the loving community. The church, I was told a story, thanks to Chris for telling me this story, that they had gathered a lot of money to build the headquarters of the church. And just as they gathered all of that money, there was a major earthquake. And many of their churches and people's homes were damaged. And they decided as a national church, we cannot build this now, we have to rebuild. and redirect those funds that were intended for this to the building up of the church again after this major natural disaster. So that piece of caring so deeply for all of the churches and kind of the joy of gathering as a church, I'm sure that this is maybe a little bit romanticized, but I can't imagine our churches being so united, right? So just it's time for the church to gather, so everyone gathers. They drop what they're doing and they go. And that's very inspiring, and certainly admirable. Yeah, so and definitely, there are choirs and opportunities for ministry. What's the same in every culture is that we gather around tables and find ourselves feeling like we are gathering around the table with Christ. So that's the same, yeah. Yeah. So there are. I feel like I heard a statistic that there are more. I want to say 100 different Pentecostal churches in Chile. So there's a wide variety, like different kinds of Pentecostalism. So they do some kind of ecumenical work within Pentecostalism, but they're also doing that ecumenical church that is beyond Pentecostalism. I'm sorry that I'm not really an expert in that, but yeah, that's a first thought. So, but they are connecting with churches there. They're connecting with other churches. There's a great deal of gratitude for that Ohio region that gifted them the land to have the Shalom Center on, and kind of the vision to make it what it is today. So, great. Thank you so much for gathering around these tables, for listening to me talk for longer than I had hoped to talk. Thank you very much. And if anybody has other questions, I'm happy to chat with you about it as you make your way. Thanks again. Thank you so much. Alrighty.